Good morning. Okay, anybody from the online students who can summarize the chapter? Raise your hands. Online students. Anyone who can just summarize the chapter? I'll just take off my earphones so the others would also be able to listen. Okay, Arinder, just start with the summary of the chapter. Aryan.
Ma'am, it is a story about a person named Andrew Manson who was newly out of his medical school and has just began his medical practice. So one day when he got to a fight with his girl that he loves, Christine, he was met by Joe Morgan. And Joe and his wife were nearly married for 20 years and were expecting their first child. So so Andrew Manson went to their home where Joe Morgan walked outside the house and he asked him to go inside and help out his wife so that the delivery could be successful of the child. So he went inside and looked at the condition of the woman, and then he realized that they wanted him to stay there no matter what, and he has to be there all the time so that no problem could arise from.
Okay, fine. I'm just summarizing it quickly. This chapter is about a doctor, Andrew Manson, who has just been out of the medical college and he has joined as an assistant to a senior doctor. And the name of the doctor is Edward, Dr. Edward Page. Okay, and one day he has had a very disappointing evening with his with a girl whom he loves, and the name of the girl is Christine. And while he is returning home, he meets a person named whom does he meet? Joe Morgan. Joe Morgan is a driller and he's waiting outside his house. And why is he waiting for him? Because he wants the doctor to accompany him to his home because they're expecting their first child after a gap of 20 years of marriage. Okay, so he goes in and he's thinking about the evening, the dismal evening that he had with his beloved Christine. And while he's meditating, he's thinking about those thoughts, and he sits there because there's still some time for the delivery. So the mother of the lady, the wife of Joe Morgan is Susan Morgan. The mother doesn't want that the doctor should go home, and so that is why to keep him busy, she offers to make tea for him. Okay, and as it is, the doctor doesn't feel like going home because he knows it that if he goes home, he would not be able to have even 1 hour rest. So he prefers staying there only. And after a lot of struggle, when finally the baby is born, it is to his horror because he had promised everybody that everything would be all right, both the mother and the child would be all right, and the parents, the grandparents, the grandmother, all of them were so eager to have that child. But the tragedy is that the child is born, but it is lifeless. Okay, so and at that particular moment, even the condition of the mother is very critical, and so he doesn't know whom to look after, whom to pay attention to first. So quite instinctively, quite unconsciously, he first of all tries to revive the mother. And once her condition is stable, he asks for the child from the midwife, from the nurse, and the midwife, thinking the child was lifeless, had very foolishly kept the child under the bed on a heap of sodden newspapers. And he doesn't even the doctor doesn't even have any time to scold or reprimand the nurse. He quickly bends down, he kneels down and picks up the child. And and the moment he looks at the child, he understands it that the child is having suffering from a medical condition, and that condition is known as, in medical terms, it is called asphyxia pallida, which is, and it's on page number, if you were absent yesterday, it's given on page number, the top of this page, page number 68, the second line of this page, asphyxia pallida. This is a condition wherein the child has suffered from suffocation or is unconscious because of lack of oxygen and presence of carbon dioxide inside the blood. And that is why and it is also accompanied by paleness of the skin and also loss, a weak pulse and loss of reflexes. So, and he had witnessed such a similar case, and he knows the kind of treatment that was meted out there. So he follows the same treatment, and he immediately asks the nurse to get in two basins, and also hot water and cold water. And like a juggler, we had discussed it yesterday also, like a juggler, he hurls the child once inside hot water and immediately after that inside cold water. And this is what he does for 15 minutes. And he's sweating all over, he's tired, he's overwrought, he's exhausted, but he's breathing very heavily, but no breath comes out of the lax body of the child. Okay, followed. So we had completed till this much. Concentrate on page number 68, and we have to continue from one, two, three, four, fourth last paragraph. Okay, and then he says a desperate sense of defeat pressed on him. Why a desperate sense of defeat? Because after paying so many efforts, after doing so much, he fails to resuscitate the child, to revive the child. Resuscitate means, we discussed it yesterday also, it is reviving. Okay, so he fails to revive the child, so that is why he feels a kind of a raging hopelessness. What is raging? What is rage? Have you ever heard of this word? Rage, R-A-G-E. He says raging hopelessness. Yes, anger. It is anger. So he gets angry at himself because he's not able to revive the child, and he feels hopeless. He feels despair, a sense of uh, he's very gloomy. He's very sad because after all the promises that he had made, he has not been able to keep his promise. He felt the midwife watching him in stark consternation. What is consternation? Yes, even the midwife is feeling very panicky and terrorized because, as it is, the midwife didn't know, and she was not happy with the kind of efforts the doctor was making, because she felt that it was a kind of disrespect to the dead body. She felt that the child was already dead. So why is he doing these kinds of efforts for reviving a dead child? So she is terrorized, and she's also disappointed, and she's constantly looking at the doctor, while there, pressed back against the wall, where she had all the time remained. Who was there standing there? Uh, there was her hand pressed to her throat. Who was the lady? The lady was, आपको तो पता होगा. Who was the lady? Who else was there inside the house? Amrit. The mother of Susan, the mother of Susan. Okay, the grandmother of the child. Okay, so she was there, her hand pressed to her throat, uttering no sound, her eyes burning upon him. She was constantly staring at the doctor, and was the old woman. He remembered her longing for a grandchild, how much her desire was, how keen she was to have a grandchild, as great as had been her daughter's longing for this child. Even the daughter, even Susan, was so keen to have that child, and now he had proved as a kind of a failure for them. Okay, so all dashed away now, futile, everything was as if it was useless, beyond any remedy. What do you understand by this phrase, beyond remedy? Yes, he would not be able to. He felt that he would not be able to. He couldn't revive the child, so he was dead. So it was beyond any cure. The floor was now a draggled mess. On the floor, everything was lying here and there. There were newspapers, and then there were towels, and there were things like that. Stumbling over a sopping towel, Andrew almost dropped the child. The child was lifeless, so even the body of the child was kind of very slippery. So he almost dropped the child out of his hands, which was now wet and slippery in his hands, like a strange white fish. For mercy's sake, doctor, whimpered the midwife, it's stillborn. So she just shouted at the doctor and said, what are you doing, doctor? Stop this now. Enough. It's stillborn. It is emotionless. It is a lifeless child. What are you doing to the child? Andrew did not heed her. Did not heed her means he did not pay any attention to the midwife, to the nurse. Beaten, he was beaten. He was despairing. He was hopeless. Having labored in vain, he had struggled so much, he had put in so many efforts, but in vain for half an hour. He still persisted in one last effort. He still thought that I should put in more efforts for one last time. Rubbing the child with a rough towel, crushing and releasing the little chest with both his hands. What did he do? He put pressure on the chest, then he released the pressure. Okay, trying to get breath into that limp body, into that lifeless body. And then, as if by a miracle, the pygmy chest which his hands enclosed. He had enclosed the chest within his hands and he was pressing it. Then he was releasing the pressure. He was doing this, repeatedly. That chest gave a short, convulsive heave, another. He could feel the heartbeat suddenly, as if a kind of a miracle had happened. And the child started breathing. Okay, and Andrew turned greedy. Such was his feeling, he became so emotional, and the feeling was so great, it was so exquisite that it was so extraordinary. The feeling of that heartbeat beneath his fingers that he started fainting. It was as if he would faint, as if he would become unconscious. The sense of life springing beneath his fingers after all that unavailing striving, after all that, labor that he had done for the last so many hours. It was so exquisite, it was so wonderful, it was so magnificent that it almost made him faint. He almost became unconscious with the life, that he could feel beneath his fingers. Got it? So he redoubled his efforts. The moment he could feel the heartbeat, he, began with more efforts. He redoubled his efforts and feverishly. And then what happened? The child was gasping now. It was taking deep breaths, deeper and deeper. A bubble of mucus. It came from one tiny nostril. So from one of his nostrils, a kind of mucus came out. But that thing, it was like a shiny, it was like an iridescent, a joyful iridescent bubble. That mucus, for the doctor, it was like something which gave him extraordinary joy. Okay, iridescent means shiny, something which shines. The limbs were no longer boneless. We discussed it yesterday. They were hanging, the arms and legs were hanging, but now, because of life inside them, they were no longer boneless, and the head no longer lay back spinelessly. The head was lolling, on the neck like this. But now it was no longer spineless because it had life inside it. And the blanched skin, the white, the pale skin, was slowly turning pink now. Then exquisitely came the child's cry. The child started crying. Dear Father in heaven. The nurse sobbed hysterically. She, became hysterical and she just started crying because even she could not bear that. She could not. Understand how that miracle had happened. It's come alive. Andrew handed her the child. He felt weak and he felt dazed. About him, the room lay in a shuddering litter. There was so much, lying here and there in a mess all around the room. Like blankets were there, the towels, the basins, the soil instruments, the syringe, the hypodermic syringe, the vial which he had just broken and he had injected that, the medicine into Susan's arm. Now that syringe was lying, and the towels, the basins, the blankets, everything, they were lying here and there, and the kettle on its side in a puddle of water. Upon the huddled bed, the mother was still there, and she still dreamed her way quietly through the anesthetic. The effect of chloroform, ether, was still upon her. She was still not fully conscious. She was unconscious, the mother. The old woman still stood against the wall, but now her hands were together and her lips moved without sound, inaudibly. What was she doing? She was praying. Okay. Mechanically, Andrew wrung out his sleeve, pulled on his jacket. उसकी sleeve जो पसीने से भरी थी उसको झाड़ा, and he just pulled on his jacket. He put it on, and he said, He told the nurse that I'll fetch my bag later. मैं bag बाद में लेने आऊँगा. And then he went downstairs through the kitchen into the scullery. Scullery is a room for washing dishes, etc. He went there, his lips were dry, and at the scullery, he took a long drink of water. He had water, and he reached for his hat and for his coat. Outside, whom did he meet? He found Joe, the father. He was standing on the pavement with a tense, expectant face. All right, Joe, he said thickly, both all right. He just said one sentence, not even a complete sentence, just a phrase, both all right. Okay. It was quite light. Now it was nearly 5 o'clock. A few miners were already in the streets, the first of the night shift moving out. As Andrew walked with them, spent and slow. Spent means, what does spent mean here? Spent, tired, overexhausted, and slow, his footfalls echoing with the others under the morning sky, he kept thinking blindly, oblivious, forgetful. Oblivious means forgetful of all other work he had done in Blendley, and he said, I have done something, oh God, I have done something real at last. So underline this, this is a very important line. It can come as a question. Why did he utter these words? I've done something, oh God, I've done something real at last. Okay, so this was the chapter. Let's discuss the textbook questions and then we'll discuss the assignment. The very first question is the same one that I asked you to underline. Oh God, I've done something. Oh God, I've done something real at last. Why does Dr. Andrew say so and what does it mean? Why does he say so and what does it mean? What is
Commendable work. He not only helped the middle aged lady in the safe delivery of a male child, but also restored them to perfect health. The major achievement of Andrew was to resuscitate the stillborn child. First, he laid the child on a blanket and began the special method of respiration. Then, he tried the hot and cold water treatment, dipping the baby alternately. He then made another last effort and rubbed the child with a rough towel and went on pressing and releasing the baby's little chest with his hands. At last, the baby responded and his chest heaved. Andrew redoubled his efforts, and the child was gasping now and started to cry. Thus, Andrew called upon God as witness of his act, which was no less than a miracle.
Yes, very good. So the kind of work that he had done that night, it was no less than a miracle, and that was a praiseworthy kind of a thing. And it meant the revival of the stillborn child. So naturally, this kind of a thing which he had done, it would naturally enhance his medical career and whatever he had done so far. It was much more than that, and his reputation as a doctor in Blenley was definitely going to what? What? Go up. It was definitely going to be enhanced because of this. And then you can describe, as Tushita had done, you can describe how he revived the child. First of all, he tried the artificial method of respiration. Then he asked for two basins. One he filled with hot water and another with cold water, and he dipped the child into the two of them. And but when nothing happened, he rubbed the chest of the child with the rough towel and he pressed it and released the pressure, and then actually he was able to resuscitate the child, and this was a great achievement of his, and definitely it was going to enhance his career as a doctor in Blenley. Got it? Next is, there lies a great difference between textbook medicine and the world of a practicing physician. Elaborate. What is the difference between this? There lies a great difference between textbook medicine and the world of a practicing physician. What is textbook medicine and what is the world of practicing physician? What is the
Between what we actually study in the textbook compared to what we practice in reality. Because sometimes in textbook there are things and experiences which we don't get, which we get from the practice, and certain criteria, situations happen which are not described how to handle in real life? Yes, very good. Textbook medicine, it is what is textbook medicine based on? It is based upon the research of so many scientists, research of so many doctors, research and documentation and experimentation and observation of so many things. So it is very important that you need to have textbook medicine. The knowledge of textbook medicine is